In this video, we're going to be talking about the tank in Ashes of Creation. We're going to be talking about the things I like, the things I don't like, what I'd like to see changed, and doing a little bit of PvP theory crafting. I've played almost to level 20. This is by far the class I've spent the most time playing, theory crafting, talking with other people about. So this one I feel like I have the most expertise about. And it's one of the classes that I am considering maining when the game actually comes out. So far, I have narrowed down my class choice to 4, which is not much narrowing down. We're stuck between the tank, the fighter, the bard, and the rogue. So we've narrowed it down to that, and not much narrowing down, but there's a lot of cool stuff I want to try, want to test. So so far the tank, I enjoy it, and I like where the direction is headed for the in-game stuff. I will say that the class is very much a slow burn. Leveling at the start is rough, especially if this is your first character. I could see that if you've learned the game and leveled a character before, you're not going to be nearly as intimidated. But if you're learning all of the new things, your farming spots, just the general things about the game, the tank is kind of, you're making it a little harder than if you were a range class or, one of these more solo-friendly classes, because the tank, especially early on, is very miserable to level. The class gets much better in terms of your power level. I feel like you just get much more powerful when you get to around level 12 or 13. Once you get, your full kit or access to most of your kit with those synergies, and you sort of figure out the game, figure out how to play, things start to feel much better. But I will warn you that it is one of the tougher classes off the start because you just don't have much to work with, but it does get much better as you level up. The tank class in Ashes of Creation is by far the least played class. Everybody I've talked to pretty much agrees that tanks are the bottleneck in terms of forming groups. So if you are looking to be a desired player, play a tank. Everybody's looking for a tank. You can easily find pug groups. I've had no issues doing this. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I definitely think the slow burn in terms of the initial levels is not helping. But also, just like in every other MMORPG, tanking, there's a lot of personal responsibility. A lot of the weight is on your shoulders. If you're a bad tank, everybody's going to know. If you're a good tank, everybody's going to know. If you're underleveled, everybody's going to know. If you're undergeared, everybody's going to know. Whereas if you are that on a DPS, nobody's going to know. You're going to be able to just sort of, hide within the safety of the group. And yeah, a lot of people do not like that personal responsibility. So, yeah, there's definitely some things working against tanks right now. One of the big ones is that Ashes of Creation has a death penalty. When you die in PvP or PvE, you accumulate XP debt. You don't lose any levels, but you will have to sort of make up lost ground. And what this is doing is it's causing tanks to be underleveled relative to their peers. So if you're in a peer group of other players and, they're level 15 and you've been playing with them most of the time, there's a good chance that you might be level 13 or level 12 because of a few factors. The first one being the death penalty. When you are a tank, you are going to be dying more than other players, just flat out because you're a melee class. You have less, getaway, runaway potential. And also, you're the first one to die in these group settings because you have all the aggro. So you will die more, therefore accumulate more XP debt and be underleveled relative to your peers who can, safely run away while you're the one that gets fucked up. And the other factor is that DPS are much better at solo leveling, so in those downtime moments where there's not a group going, they are out by themselves, being much more efficient, killing the mobs faster, AoE farming, doing all those things that DPS can do that the tanks can't do. So it's kind of a double whammy. I'm curious if anything should even be done about the whole underleveled tanks phenomenon, but I have noticed this across multiple guilds that it seems like the DPS are just waiting for the tanks to catch up, and that the tanks systematically kind of are just behind everyone else in terms of getting experience. So should this even be resolved? Should the mechanics just stay the same and we just don't worry about it and we let the market correct for itself? Or should we have less of an XP penalty for tanks on PvE death? That's one thing that could potentially alleviate this, is if tanks took less experience debt when dying to PvE mobs specifically. Again, maybe it's not worth bothering with. Maybe you just say, hey, that's the name of the game. Tanks are going to be a commodity, and we want it to be that way. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Now let's get into my concerns with the tank. So the number one concern I have revolves around the shield meta. At the current moment of me making this video, you can use all of the tank abilities with a two-hander. It doesn't matter if you have a two-handed greatsword, you can still use shield bash, still use reflect, still use shield slam. You can use all of those shield themed abilities regardless of the weapon you have. I've heard conflicting reports that this is not intended and will change in the future, or it is intended. We don't really know, but as of the recording of this video, you can still do that. If that ends up not being the case, and those critical abilities require a shield, I cannot envision any scenario in which you will want to use a two-hander. Those abilities, a lot of them are just critical to the tank. They are critical utility. So that's something I don't love. And even right now, when you can use all of those abilities with a two-hander, it still seems like you're just not going to be able to get away from the shield. The shield in PvE right now is incredible. Having access to the block is, you have to have it. Like, you just have to have it. So for PvP, I could definitely see, using two-handers potentially. But even then, it just seems like the sword and the shield and the mace and the shield are just so good that we are... it's going to be like a New World situation where you just can't really get away from it in a lot of cases. So yeah, that's one thing. The next thing is multiple tanks. So right now, tanks are the bottleneck and the shortage, but are multiple tanks going to be useful? It seems like right now, with a lot of the group farming, it seems like you really only need one tank. There's not a lot of boss swap mechanics. And to be fair, nobody's really done a lot of bosses. So maybe this is a concern that isn't really valid. But I'm hoping that we will see, multiple tanks be useful and not be like a burden, and not be like, oh, you never want more than one tank. And I could definitely see some potential where you would want more than one tank. For example, like off-tanking in this game with the protect mechanic. If you have a particularly hard-hitting ability, having another tank be able to protect the main tank and mitigate 30% of that damage and spread out those damage spikes. So, this again, maybe not a real concern, but something, I'm worried about. Now let's get into the fun stuff with PvP and Theorycrafting. Now, unfortunately, nobody has really done a ton of PvP in Ashes of Creation. The corruption system is very punishing right now. Believe it or not, I know a lot of people that don't play the game think that everybody's just griefing each other and, it's just a PvP, gank box. That's not the case at all. The game is incredibly peaceful, probably a little too peaceful. And a lot of people are leveling and testing. So the game, for the most part, sort of been, not a ton of PvP yet. But I have done a little bit of PvP. It's been very promising.
Yeah, I think I'm hardcore corrupted killing that guy. I can't even attack this dude. No wonder it's been feeling weird. Oh, what? So I have to have the thing on? Oh, that's a little janky. Oh, yeah, I'm fried. Oh, yeah, we are fried, bro.
And I've done a lot of Theorycrafting involving PvP. So... I think the tank, there's a lot of potential for the tank, and I think it's going to be the linchpin in terms of making plays, in terms of like setting up kills on people. I think the tank is going to be the absolute linchpin of that. They are going to be the quarterback of Ashes of Creation that sort of do the thing that sets up their teammates to score the touchdown, or in this case, set their teammates up to get the kills on other players. First thing, I think, if you're a shot caller, a group leader, target caller, whatever your role is, if it's similar to that, there is a very good argument that you should play tank, because you just have the toolkit that is really going to synergize with that role that you have in your guild. So first thing is you're tanky. If you're a shot caller, you want to be tanky. You're the guy captaining the ship. You need to be alive. But the next thing is you have quite a bit of CC. This again, if you're the guy picking the targets, you're the guy deploying the CC. It just kind of makes sense. You have the wall, the May wall. Again, if you're the one that is dictating where the group goes, you're going to get more value out of the wall and cutting people off and things like that. But the biggest thing, the number one biggest thing, and the most obvious thing is the grapple. The grapple, even if the entire tank kit was kind of bad and everything was undertuned, people would still take tanks for the grapple. This one skill is just incredibly powerful in any sort of MMORPG PvP. Like, wow. Especially in a game like Ashes, where there's not a lot of like instantaneous movement. There's not a ton of like blinks and things like that just sort of undo it. A lot of the time, you pull somebody in, they're kind of there for a while. Like, they have to sort of run back to the back line and retreat. There's not a lot of get out of jail free cards in that regard. So grapple, super, super powerful. The next thing that I think is incredibly good about tanks is the protect skill. Being able to just put protect on whoever you want, and they, 30% of the damage they take is transferred to you. That's going to be so good. That's going to make, again, it's too early to really tell what the go-to definitive, like, you got to kill this class for. Is that going to be Bard? Is that going to be Cleric? Like, what's going to be the class that everybody jumps on as soon as they see it, no matter what? Like, the high priority kill target. When you can just protect that guy, that's going to be so good. This skill has 100% uptime and no cooldown. This is going to be incredible for tanks. And it's also going to be an incredible skill expression tool for tanks. Just this one skill alone is going to separate the men from the boys. The really good tanks are going to be the ones that know how to micromanage that protect skill, and they're going to be able to be the ones that see, like, okay, they're going to set up a kill on my mage, so I'm going to preemptively protect him before he gets gripped into the stack. Like, the amount of playmaking that's going to happen with this protect skill is immense, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the skill expression that comes from just this one skill alone. And not only do you have protect, you have absorption field, Aegis, intercept, iron aura, all of your CC that you can use to peel for people. Like, the amount of defensive playmaking you can do is going to be insane. And we haven't even talked about taunt, which taunt is a skill that you just throw this out on, you know, a high value DPS target, and you just eat up 30% of the damage they do, basically, because they either have to attack you or do 30% less damage. That's going to be crazy. The amount of micromanagement and damage mitigation you can do with the tank, I'm really interested to see what the great tank players do, because I think they're going to have an incredible impact. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm so attracted to the tank, is because the amount of potential impact you can have with these mechanics in PvP is going to be crazy. And then you also have the big showstopper skill, which is the May wall ability, which is crazy cool. You know, that's a really cool mechanic, but I honestly think this skill, it's such a showstopper. It's the first thing everybody sees. I think people, they see this skill and they almost undervalue all the other stuff because they think all of the value is going to come from the wall. When in reality, I think a lot of the value is going to come from protect, Aegis, you know, all of these little absorption skills, the intervene, like all of that little stuff, I think is really going to make the true impact. The next thing that I think is crazy powerful about the tank, and it's kind of something that's like stealthily OP, is the amount of staggers you can do as a tank. Stagger is a mechanic that's not necessarily sexy on its surface, but when you factor in all of the abilities that it empowers, not only for just the tank kit, but for other kits and for kits that don't have access to nearly the amount of staggers that tanks do, the tank is going to be empowering tons of these other classes and making their day much easier. For example, the fighter doesn't have to worry about switching stances to get their stagger if they're playing with a tank that's just like spamming them out like Oprah giving away cars. Same thing with the mage. You know, the mage is not going to have to worry about getting those staggers out to double their lightning bolt damage. Dude, this tank can really just spam them out like no one's business. You get staggers from your low cooldown shield abilities, which are spamming out all the time. You get them from your finishers if you spec into that, which I think people are going to. And you get them from Intimidating Aura. Intimidating Aura is crazy, dude. It has 100% uptime and AoE, in a large AoE, by the way, like a 15-meter radius AoE, spams out staggers on anybody that's even near you. It's crazy. You get so many staggers as just a lone tank that it's not uncommon to see 15-second long staggers because you're just reapplying them so frequently, because you get them from your low cooldown shield bash abilities, you get them from your finishers, and you get even more of them from your finishers if you spec into it. You get a ton, and I mean a ton, off of Intimidating Aura. Intimidating Aura is like secretly, or maybe not so secretly, depending on how much people are paying attention, insane. People sort of see that skill as like a PvE skill. Dude, I think that skill is insanely good for PvP because you just spam out staggers in like a 15-meter radius around your character. It has 100% uptime. Yeah, the skill doesn't do hardly any damage, but it just spams out staggers like no one's business. And I feel like having those really long, like 15-second staggers on just everything is going to be super powerful, because you got to understand that, you know, even though stagger might not do a ton for you individually, for your group cumulatively, it's going to be huge, because there's so many abilities that get modified. Either their damage goes up, they get a CC element added to them, or they just have some other sort of weird effect that they get from staggers. And the other thing with staggers is that staggers lead to more CC themselves. It's sort of easy to forget, but if a target is staggered, they have a chance to get randomly tripped every time they take damage. So yeah, I am super bullish on the stagger spam. The next thing I've noticed is that it seems like the fighter and the tank are going to be like bread and butter. I think this combo and this synergy is going to be insane. The tank can really, really empower the fighter to just go insane. For the first reason being the stagger spam. The tanks spamming out staggers the way they do, and with both of them being in melee range, with both of them being on similar targets, being in the same place in the battlefield, fighters are going to really, really benefit from the tanks just spamming out those staggers like crazy. And the next thing is that the fighters are going to be protected. Being a fighter, you know, you're a little squishy. You know, you're diving into dangerous situations. Fighter is kind of like a dive class. And I feel like this synergy is almost like a Zarya-Winston synergy from Overwatch, where Winston just jumps in and then Zarya throws the bubbles on him as soon as he starts taking damage. I think that's going to happen in this game, but with Protect and with Aegis and with, you know, the fighter being a melee class and with both of these classes being in the same place at the same time. There's a whole lot of just natural synergy and a whole lot of natural just damage taking that the tank is going to be able to do for the fighter without nearly as much synergy as doing that with like a ranged class. You're going to be on top of the fighter. It's going to be very easy for you to get Aegis value. It's going to be very easy for you to get value from your other tank skills that are, you know, proximity based. And if you're the fighter and you're able to just sit in the back line while the tank effectively acts as a spirit link totem from World of Warcraft, that's going to be huge for you. The damage you take is going to be so much more healable when you have a big HP guy just spreading out that damage and, you know, flattening those spikes down to where they're much more manageable for your healers. And you got the staggers too. So I think it's going to be a really, really easy and effective synergy. Now let's get into a couple suggestions. And the number one suggestion I have, speaking of Zarya, is I would love to see a damage boost mechanic based off of the amount of damage you absorb or the amount of damage you take. I'm not sure how you would implement it. Maybe it's total damage taken, or maybe it's damage taken specifically from Protect and Aegis and all of these absorption skills. But I would love to see the tank get some sort of payoff for absorbing all that damage, whether it's like a flat, you know, percentile damage boost, like a Zarya bubble where they just do more damage the more damage they take, or if it's like some sort of unleash mechanic where all the damage you take is like stored in a battery and you just blow up and explode it. But I would love to see, just for the pure power fantasy of it, I think a lot of people would love to see that all the damage you take somehow be rewarded by a damage boost mechanic. I think that's fun. I think a lot of people like that class, you know, that class fantasy of a, you know, like Thor charging up Iron Man with his thunder and then he's like, oh, but actually, and reversing it on him. Like, I think that's just a fun, cool thing, and I would love to see them explore that. You know, maybe they'd have to tune the tank differently to account for that, but I think that's just a fun mechanic I would like to see.
Power at 400% capacity.
How about that?
And my next suggestion is purely mechanical, and that is that the reflect skill is incredibly wonky. Right now, it is very easy to double tap the skill and have it go off twice, or have it get auto canceled by your basic attacks, or just for whatever reason, this thing in practice gets canceled or just doesn't work right. And I would love to see that you just hit the reflect button and it goes off. Just have it ignore global cooldown. Just make it work. Just make the thing work seamlessly where you hit the button and the thing goes off immediately, instantly. Have it ignore animations, have it cancel animations. I don't know, but I think a lot of people would love to see this skill be much more reactive, much more consistent. I would love to see it almost have like a little 1 second lockout. You know, you hit the reflect skill and you are stuck reflecting for at least a second. That way you don't double tap it and instant cancel it. Obviously, you need to fix the thing with the basic attacks being queued up and it canceling itself off of basic attacks that were previously queued up. Just some more consistency here, and maybe break the rules. I maybe break the rules for reflect, because I think it's just super lame when you go to reflect like a high priority ability which you're locked into a previous, and just take it off. Just take it off the GCD. Cheat with that ability. I think it's more fun. Do you need to maybe nerf it or nerf something else to account for that? Potentially, yes, but do it because it's better and it's more fun and it's cooler. Anyway, that's all I got. Let me know if any of you guys play tank and what you think thus far, but I have really been enjoying it and I cannot wait to do some more PvP. So yeah, let me know what you think. Have a good one.